I think I've probably watched about 100 videos of artists saying that they're going to quit Instagram, and I think it's fair to say that we all feel that way most of the time these days. We put time into our work, we share it, and then it reaches no one. Then we finally give in and post a reel, and even that seems to be hit or miss these days. So in this video, I want to talk about that, tell you about some other places that I've been sharing my work, and why all this matters. Over the last year, the majority of my regular posts on Instagram continued to reach no one. The other day, I posted a reel and it did fairly well in terms of my now lowered expectations. They're basically my only glimmer of hope of reaching people these days. So I thought I'd be clever and repurpose a thing that would have been a post into a 5-second animation that I could post as a reel. And guess what? It tanked! I was super frustrated. It seems that nothing is consistent anymore. So of course that spurred some spicy reactions of me complaining on my stories, but the upside to all this is that I started talking to other artists about this. So why are we still all on Instagram? Well, according to the other artists that I talked to, they say that it's because they just hope that one day it will magically get better. And it would take something really bad to happen to get them to leave. And you know what? I kind of agree. I've spent years building a presence on Instagram, and it was the one place that I found the most engagement originally. It's also one of the few places where engagement comes from both other artists and just regular people who seem to like my work. So while I do want to quit at times, I think it would be wasteful to just throw it out. Instead, I'm just kind of rewiring my expectations and still taking note of what kinds of things perform well on there. And perform well is a relative term. I'm still sharing the work I normally would, albeit sometimes in different formats. I feel this is sort of a good way to blend myself with what's needed to stay relevant, and I kind of look at this as the one for them and one for me method. And I think that's the boring answer that we all don't really want to hear, but that's my strategy for now. But all of this makes one thing super clear. As artists and creatives, we have to be careful not to become reliant on one thing. I run a creative agency, and I can tell you from experience that you never want to rely on one client to make all of your revenue, because what if they someday just up and disappeared on you? You'd be screwed. And since attention is currency these days, we really need to think about diversifying how we share our work and where we share our work. So here are some other places that I now share my work, how I use them, and my thoughts on them. Twitter. I'll start by saying that Twitter is not the place to make an archive of your work. Twitter only displays a finite amount of images that you tweet, so they'll disappear after a while. But if you're looking for the more social aspect that Instagram lost a long time ago, this place might help you fill the void. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think that the NFT artists kind of helped Twitter remain relevant for art, and that's still a lot of the art communities that you'll find on there, but you'll see a lot of artists kind of do both, and there are still some regular artists on there as well. If you engage with people, retweet their work, and become part of a community, they'll likely do that for you right back. Obviously, you need to be genuine, but this is a good way to meet and discover other artists. Dribbble. I think Dribbble is a good place for creating a portfolio or an archive of your work, and this is mostly because the platform positions itself to be a place for people to find inspiration, but also a place for creatives to get hired. You will find all sorts of creatives on Dribbble, but I think it's truly best for illustrators, people who work in branding, typeface design, and packaging, and anything that's very visual. There's a lot of people who'd argue that it's not a great place to search for inspiration for website design, UI, UX, and I'd have to agree with them. Arnaud Ross made a good video about this and gave some other places where you might want to look instead, so I'll link that video below. And also, sorry to the photographers out there, I know you guys are looking for a new place too, but there's not really a lot of photography on Dribbble, and it just doesn't seem to do very well either. But assuming your work is in the illustration, kind of graphic design-y realm, then Dribble's a good place to get eyes on your work. It's largely dependent on tagging your work with the right tags so you show up when people search. I've personally gotten quite a few jobs from Dribbble, so I definitely can recommend it for that. I do have a pro account. I'm not sure if that really makes a difference or not, but either way, I would definitely check it out. Dribbble isn't exactly the most social place either, so if you're looking for comments or feedback or critiques or stuff like that, don't expect to find it there. Reddit. I actually think that Reddit is a very slept-on place that a lot of artists haven't really tapped into. There is a bit of nuance to Reddit because you have to take a look and do some digging at which subreddits are the best for you to post in depending on what kind of work that you make. I personally tend to post in r/illustration, r/stickers, and r/fine art. There are other ones that I subscribe and post to from time to time, depending on the kind of work that I'm making and sharing. So you really need to do your own digging, and the other thing to note is that a lot of these groups have their own sets of rules, so you really have to know the rules of the group before you start posting. I've found Reddit to be a good place to engage with people who are genuinely pretty interested in your work, You won't always find a ton of engagement, but when you do, I've always found it to be super genuine, like I said. So it's good for that social aspect and to get some more eyes on your work. But it's not exactly a good place to curate a portfolio or an archive. Behance. Behance has been around for a long time, and for a lot of people it's been an alternative to having their own website or portfolio. Even though I don't really agree with that mentality, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. I personally use Behance as a duplicate of my personal website portfolio. I really only share the larger projects there, or what some people might consider case studies. So with that said, I don't usually end up posting there very regularly. It's a few times a year maybe. I found there to be little to no engagement there in terms of comments, and views are something that you sort of just rack up over time. Kind of like Dribbble, people finding your work is super dependent on you tagging your work correctly in the right categories. YouTube makes this list, but not in the same sense that these other platforms do. You could use YouTube as a way to share your process, share tips, or even do tutorials. I'm sort of still determining what I'm doing with YouTube, but as of this video, I've been using it to share my opinions on art and design related topics, and share information that might be useful to other artists and creatives, like my best die cut stickers video. But I'm looking to utilize YouTube in a way to talk about topics that surround my work, and hopefully people who are interested will stumble onto my illustrations, and if they like it, that's great. Website. Even with all these platforms out there, I still think people should have their own personal website that functions as their portfolio, a place where people can find out more about them, and a way to contact them. This would be the place where you'd show your polished work and where you'd send people to look at it in a professional setting. I kind of see this as the anchoring place where you have total control in terms of how your work is presented. And you know that your website's not going anywhere unless, of course, you stop paying for hosting or something. You'll still have to drive people to your website, but people will still be able to find you and search for you in the traditional sense of a Google search. And this could be good if somebody's looking for somebody in their local area who offers a service that you do. So to wrap up, none of these platforms are going to reinvent the golden age of Instagram for you, but I think it's more important now than ever to build a presence on multiple platforms. You can use different platforms to make yourself feel a little bit more dimensional, and you can kind of look at each one as a little sphere that shows a slightly different side of you and your work. Places to be social, like Twitter and Reddit. Places to show process and knowledge, like YouTube or Instagram Reels. Places to quickly share and update what you're working on, like Dribbble and Instagram. And places to show polished versions of your work, like your website or Behance. Let me know what you guys think and your thoughts on all of this. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.